Imagine the agonizing wait, the desperate hope, and the crushing uncertainty faced by families whose loved ones were snatched away. Today, that agonizing wait may be nearing an end for some, but the journey to recovery is just beginning. Reports indicate that a group of Israeli hostages held in Gaza are slated for release, a pivotal moment in the ongoing conflict. Former U.S. President Donald Trump has even declared that the war is over, a statement that, as you might imagine, is already stirring strong reactions. But is it really over? Let's delve into the details of this complex situation. Live updates. Stay informed with real-time developments surrounding the release of hostages in Gaza through these live updates. CNN Live Updates, English, https www.cnn.com/wrote Israel-Hamas, Gaza hostages ceasefire. CNN Live Updates, Spanish, https cnnespanol.cnn.com/mundo live news Gaza Liberación Rehenes, Israel, Hamas en Vivo tracks. CNN has also visited the hospital prepared to receive the arriving hostages. Key developments. Hostage release imminent. Approximately 20 Israeli hostages believed to be alive in Gaza are anticipated to be freed within hours. This is part of a larger agreement brokered by the United States. Prisoner exchange. In a reciprocal move, nearly 2,000 Palestinian prisoners and detainees currently held in Israeli facilities are also expected to be released. This exchange marks the initial and arguably most delicate phase of the U.S.-brokered ceasefire deal. Trump's diplomatic mission. Former U.S. President Donald Trump is en route to Israel, where he's scheduled to meet with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. He also plans to address the Knesset, Israeli parliament, and meet privately with families directly affected by the hostage crisis. The visit signals a continued U.S. interest, however. Some may debate whether it helps or hinders progress. International Summit in Egypt. Following his visit to Israel, Trump will travel to Egypt. There, he will participate in a summit focused on the future of Gaza, alongside leaders representing over 20 nations, including French President Emmanuel Macron and UK leader Keir Starmer. This summit aims to foster international cooperation in addressing the long-term challenges facing the region. A glimpse into the agony, the emotional toll of this crisis is immeasurable. Omri Miran, for instance, was kidnapped when Hamas militants stormed his family's home in Kibbutz Nahal Oz. He was taken in front of his wife, Lachey, and their 2 young daughters, Roni and Alma. Imagine the terror and helplessness of that moment. CNN's Caitlin Collins spoke with Miran's brother-in-law, Moshe Lavi, who described the heartbreaking daily ritual of Omri's daughters, who patiently await their father's return. This personal story underscores the profound human cost of the conflict. Hostages Square, a beacon of hope. In Tel Aviv, crowds have gathered at Hostages Square, a place that has served as the focal point for hostage demonstrations for over 700 days. Many have stayed overnight, united in their anticipation of the hostages' release. They sing songs and watch screens that will broadcast the hostages' return. This square represents a collective yearning for the safe return of those who have been held captive. But here's where it gets controversial. Should the release of prisoners who committed violent crimes be celebrated alongside the return of innocent hostages? Some argue that it's a necessary step towards peace, while others view it as a painful concession that rewards terrorism. The long road to recovery. The Hostages and Missing Families Forum's health team has issued a crucial warning. The released hostages and their families face a long and arduous journey ahead. Years of inhumane conditions, including starvation, lack of medical care, isolation, violence, and abuse, have taken a severe toll. Experts emphasize that the immediate priorities must be medical care, close supervision, and above all, the restoration of their identities as individuals, not just as hostages. The return of deceased hostages for burial is also a critical step, allowing their families to find closure, mourn with dignity, and begin the healing process. This acknowledgement of loss is essential for both individual and collective healing. The release process. A carefully orchestrated plan. The Israeli government has outlined a detailed plan for the hostage release, learning from past experiences. In previous exchanges, Hamas has been criticized for staging what were perceived as macabre ceremonies before handing over hostages. To avoid such displays this time around, Shosh Bedrosian, a spokesperson for Israel's Prime Minister's office, has stated that there will be no Hamas propaganda and no sick displays during the release. The 20 living hostages will be released to the Red Cross and transported in 6 to 8 vehicles. After reunification with their families, they will receive treatment at 3 different hospitals. A ceremony will also be held for the hostages who have died. An international task force will be responsible for retrieving any bodies not returned during the initial 72-hour window. Following the safe transfer of hostages into Israeli territory, Israel will release the agreed-upon Palestinian prisoners and detainees. This includes 250 Palestinian prisoners serving life sentences and 1,700 Palestinians from Gaza detained after October 7, 2023. According to Israel, 142 of these prisoners will be deported, while the remainder will return to the occupied West Bank or East Jerusalem. International leaders convene in Egypt. World leaders from over 20 countries are converging in Sharm el-Sheikh, Egypt, for a summit focused on the future of Gaza. Chaired by U.S. President Donald Trump and Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi. This gathering aims to facilitate a peace-signing ceremony and address the long-term challenges facing the region. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer, upon his arrival in Egypt, emphasized the UK's commitment to playing a leading role in the next phase of the peace plan. He announced £20 million, $26 million in aid for Gaza, demonstrating the UK's commitment to supporting the region's recovery. UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres and other prominent leaders, including Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney, French President Emmanuel Macron, and German Chancellor Friedrich Merz, are also attending. Families await their loved ones in Rheims. Families of the hostages are traveling to Rheims, the designated reception point for the released hostages, after they cross the border. The releases are expected to occur in 3 batches, with the first 2 scheduled for 8 a.m. local time, 1 a.m. ET, from separate locations, followed by a third release at another location 1 hour later. This phased approach aims to ensure a smooth and orderly transfer. Trump's optimism and key takeaways. Former U.S. President Donald Trump has expressed strong confidence in the ceasefire agreement, stating that the war is over. While this statement may be premature, it reflects a sense of hope and optimism surrounding the hostage release. Here are some key points to keep in mind. Trump's confidence. The U.S. president expressed confidence that the ceasefire would hold, going so far as to tell reporters, "The war is over." Hostages Square. Preparations are underway in Tel Aviv as anticipation builds ahead of the expected releases. Live coverage of the releases will be shown in the square. Palestinian prisoners. Once the hostages have crossed back into Israel, nearly 2,000 Palestinian prisoners and detainees, set to be released, will be driven into Gaza, according to the Israeli Prime Minister's office. Death toll in Gaza still rises. The death toll in Gaza since the ceasefire began has surpassed 300. Over the past 3 days, Gaza hospitals reported 323 people dead, 295 of whom were retrieved from under the rubble. Real progress in aid. The UN said Israel had approved more aid shipments, now totaling 190,000 metric tons, in what it hopes is just the beginning in getting crucial supplies to the enclave. Aid trucks lined up. Egypt's state-affiliated Al Qahira News reported that dozens of humanitarian aid trucks are lined up on the Egyptian side of the Rafah border crossing, awaiting the signal to enter Gaza. New era for Israel. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said Sunday the hostage release would mark the beginning of a new era for the country, a path of healing, a path of rebuilding, uncertainty and hope. As the clock ticks down, it's important to remember that the hostages themselves may be unaware of their impending release. CNN Global Affairs analyst Brett McGurk, a former presidential advisor and Middle East envoy, offered insights into what the hostages might be experiencing. He emphasized the importance of verifying the hostages' safe transfer out of Gaza before declaring success. McGurk said that he's holding his breath until the hostages are physically out of Gaza. I'm pretty confident this is going to go through as planned, he said. We used to actually track the vehicles in Gaza when they get in the ICRC vehicle, tracking the vehicle all the way through Gaza until they are finally in Israel and in safe hands. And until that moment, you have not succeeded. Avoiding past mistakes, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu postponed the release of 110 Palestinian detainees by several hours after live images were broadcast of a crowd of thousands jostling and cheering as the hostages were handed over to the Red Cross. This time round, the 20 hostages held in Gaza, who are believed to be living, will be released together to the Red Cross and transported among 6 to 8 vehicles without any sick displays by Hamas, the terror organization, Bedrosian added. The numbers behind the crisis. A total of 48 hostages are expected to be released as part of this week's ceasefire agreement. Of those captured on October 7, 2023, 20 are presumed alive and 25 are believed to be dead, with the status of 2 others uncertain. There is one additional hostage whose body was held in Gaza before the October 7 attacks. IDF soldier Hadar Golden was killed in 2014, and his body has been held captive since then. The majority of those still in Gaza are Israeli citizens. 4 are foreign nationals. 2 are from Thailand, 1 from Tanzania, and 1 from Nepal. Of the remaining foreign nationals, 3 are confirmed deceased, while the status of the 4th, Nepali citizen Bipin Joshi, remains unknown. The Israeli government has expressed grave concerns for him. All the remaining hostages believed to be alive are male. One of the deceased hostages, Inbar Hayman, is female. Hamas and other militant groups kidnapped 251 people from Israel during the October 7, 2023 terror attacks. Since the start of the war, 148 hostages have been returned alive to Israel. 140 were released and 8 were rescued by the Israeli military. Several bodies of deceased hostages were also returned by Hamas. Looking ahead, a path to healing? The release of these hostages is undoubtedly a significant step, but it is only the beginning of a long and complex process. As the hostages begin their journey toward recovery, and as leaders gather to discuss the future of Gaza, it's crucial to remember the human cost of this conflict and to strive for a lasting peace that addresses the needs and concerns of all parties involved. What are your thoughts on Trump's declaration that the war is over? Is it a realistic assessment or premature optimism? And how do you feel about the prisoner exchange? Is it a necessary compromise for peace or an unacceptable concession? Share your perspectives in the comments below.